Sad. Gad, it's heartbreaking. I mean, as I came on air tonight, I heard the story of allegedly, it's not been completely verified, but there are soldiers reporting that in one village they found the corpses of 40 babies, some of whom had been beheaded. I was coming on air too, and I took a position based probably on 30 years of being a journalist, running major newspapers, working at CNN and others, of waiting, of just saying, I think we should just wait and see what has actually happened here, get clarification, see who's actually to blame before we start passing judgment. You raced in to assume, as many people did, by the way, including the New York Times, BBC, mainstream media, and of course most of the Arab world then followed, that this was clearly, indisputably, an Israeli airstrike on this hospital. And yet all the evidence now suggests very strongly that it wasn't, that in fact this was a rocket that misfired coming from a terrorist group inside Gaza. So my question for you is this: why would you be so certain in what you said before you knew? But there are soldiers reporting that in one village they found the corpses of 40 babies, some of whom had been beheaded. But you took to your airwaves immediately because actually your, I wouldn't even say unconscious bias, your admitted propagandist bias on your part was that you wanted that to be an Israeli airstrike. It suited your narrative. And I would say that that in itself, in its way, is being a stenographer. Well, you accuse me of being a stenographer. I try and be fair and get to the truth. In your case, I don't think you try to do that. I think you appeal to your audience, appeal to your base, and you don't really care whether the facts are there or not.
This is entirely unfair because you just said circumstantial evidence favors that this was not an Israeli airstrike.
Yeah.
I gave you all of the circumstantial evidence that it does favor that this is an Israeli airstrike. You made it seem as though there is a certainty that this was 100% not an Israeli airstrike.
No, I didn't. And instead, I literally just said it's not a certainty.
Okay, sorry.
I said the evidence is increasingly pointing to this not being an Israeli airstrike. And that is expert evidence from people who have no skin in the game at all.
Yes. Well, I don't know which expert you're talking about, because I think Channel 4 did a pretty good job. As a matter of fact, I would say Channel 4 did probably the best job so far in analyzing everything that the IDF has said. But the reason why I believed, and I still do believe, that the likelihood is that this was an Israeli bombing campaign wasn't only because of the singular verifiable video, the phone video from the balcony that had all of the markings of an airstrike. The fact that the Israeli Air Force was enacting a bombing campaign in the region at the time, according to the Al Jazeera live streaming footage that everyone is using but doesn't understand. The fact that the digital media person for the IDF immediately came out and said that this was actually an airstrike that hit a Hamas target, and that he was sad that there were, casualties at the end of the day, but this was a Hamas target and celebrated it. And more importantly, I guess, the fact that this hospital had been bombed by Israel. This hospital had been bombed by Israel on Saturday. 22 hospitals have, as a matter of fact, been bombed by Israel since this last saga in the occupation. And this hospital had been bombed directly by Israel, where the cancer ward was destroyed. Israel has been bombing all of these hospitals. Israel has been calling all of these hospitals to evacuate over and over and over again. We have our biases.
I'm curious who you think I'm a propagandist for.
Honest about my biases.
Who do you think I'm a propagandist for?
Who do I think you're a propagandist for? Whichever every media person is doing propaganda.
But who for? I've got to be doing it with somebody.
You think it's a bad word? I don't. That's just the difference. This is a semantics
I do. I think it's actually quite a serious charge.
Hassan,
I think it's a serious charge to level, not on a podcaster, but as a journalist who's broadcasting around the world, who has a reputation, I believe, for being fair and impartial, actually, on these issues. It's quite a charge to just say, I'm a stenographer for the Israeli government or I'm a propagandist. I don't think there's any evidence that I'm either of those things. I'm curious who you think I'm doing
While
the
we're
propaganda
having this
for.
conversation, 3,000, Piers, while we're having this back and forth, 3,840 Palestinians have been ruthlessly slaughtered in the last incursion into Gaza. I feel like this is an incredibly selfish, self-centered conversation to have. You asked me to be on here. You wanted to hear my perspective. I'm willing to give it to you. I don't want to talk about I don't want to talk about Noam Chomsky style manufacturing consent conversations about how the media is operating
Listen,
at the